Welcome down to my 9-foot homemade oak bar. Pour yourself a cold one. You are listening to Bucs in the Basement. My name's Chris, and Craig here is the biggest Pirates fan you'll ever meet. Let's talk Pirates baseball now. Welcome to Bucs in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no one lies. We'll never know.
What's the name of that band? What's the name of that band, Craig?
Wine and Spirit.
Do they know that they are the theme song of the greatest Pirates podcast in the land? Are they aware of it?
My buddy Paul, who's the lead singer, he is well aware of it. He appreciates it, and I've actually had some listeners reach out to me and say, like, "Who is this band?" It's like, it's a pretty catchy tune. I'm like, "Yeah, it's a local band from Elwood City, Pennsylvania. Go see them. They play at some of the breweries and festivals around here. They're a pretty good band."
I know. I you know, here's the thing. I kind of feel like at some point, maybe to kick off next season, a Bucs in the Basement event, and they play at it. I'm just saying. Just something to think about. I'm just throwing it out there right now.
It'd be a good idea, man.
I'm not gonna organize it. Craig's gonna have to do it. But I mean, I just throw out the ideas and then I get out of the way. It's like throwing a grenade in and then just kind of ducking. That's kind of what I'm doing right there. This is Bucs in the Basement, the podcast for fans, by fans, and we've got all kinds of Pirates talk to do today. My name's Chris. He's Craig. And you know, there's a lot of consternation over the idea that the Pirates non-tendered a bad pitcher, and that bad pitcher got a contract with the A's, who are a bad team, leaving Oakland, and don't care if they win or lose, and can make signings like that. I'll be honest with you, if the Pirates would have made a signing like that this early on in the process, I would have been angry about it, right?
That's exactly what would have happened, Chris. And we've seen that in previous years where the Pirates will make like kind of like a quick signing to a guy who was actually a minor league free agent after being non-tendered. So, yeah, I mean, and of course, Pirates Twitter or an X or social media just kind of blows up because the Pirates do make a minor league signing. But yeah, if we would have signed a guy whose ERA was like 5.53, a whip of 1.5 last year, I mean, he did eat some innings for us, like around 50 innings. But guy, 27 years old, I would lose my mind if that was a Pirates signing at this point in the rebuild. But the A's, they picked up Miguel Andujar. They got Osvaldo Bido now. They're like taking on players from the Pirates that, you know, it's cutting the fat from the Pirates, and the A's are just like, well, we're not trying to win, so there's a starter.
All that should show you is that the Pirates had garbage. They threw the garbage away. And a team that's garbage picking went and got some of their garbage. It's like when you have something that's like really crappy in your house, like an old couch, or like I have a basketball hoop that's sitting out in front of the house right now that I'm waiting for somebody to take away because it's kind of broken, but I'm pretty sure that somebody's going to be like, ooh, I could turn that into something at my house. And somebody's going to pull up with a truck and they're going to put it in the back of it and they're going to drive off with it, I would imagine, in the next day or so. But you throw it out at the curb and somebody goes and picks at it. The Pirates used to do that. During the early parts of this rebuild, Ben Cherington was like, garbage? I'll take some garbage. Maybe I'll find something good in there, right? He was picking. He was an American picker, and that's what he was doing. The A's are still that. The Pirates are not that. If the Pirates were doing that in the offseason, I would have been so disappointed in them. It would have told me this team is not serious and that a team that should have every opportunity to be in the postseason in 2024 and start their window that hopefully will be open for a long time, that team was unserious. That's how I would feel if they were making those kinds of moves. On the other hand, I look at what the Pirates are not doing, and I got to tell you, I'm not surprised that they have to sit back a little bit and wait for the pitching market to set itself. Like the Aaron Nola dream is dead. All right, fine. He was going to go to Philadelphia no matter what. They've got something going on there for some reason, the Phillies, where players take less money to play for them. And it's a destination place for some reason. And at some point, the city of Philadelphia is going to get a championship because you have high-end players that take a little bit less just to be part of what's going on in Philly. They're living the dream right there. But I'm looking at the Lance Lynn contract with the Cardinals, $10 million to be their projected 4 starter, a guy who gave up so many home runs last year. I don't understand why he signed so early, except they're familiar with him, and he's going home at the end of his career, and he's going to be in our division. And then you see what the Braves have done so far. They've been acquiring pitchers, and they signed Reynaldo Lopez. What an early signing. And to give him $30 million plus an option year for more for a relief pitcher that's not a closer. And for 3 years, you're going to pay him $30 million, and you're going to try to stretch him out to make him a swingman. The price right now of starting pitchers early on is stupid. I mean, it's a stupid price. Those two names, Lynn and Lopez, there's nothing special enough about those guys to be making double-digit millions of dollars. And so Ben Cherington might have to sit back and wait and see what's left after teams that can overspend go and do their overspending, unless he has somebody he really, really wants.
The Lance Lynn one did surprise me, Chris. And it's surprising to a degree because, like you said, he's going back to St. Louis, the place where it all started. But you get that 1-year deal for $10 million. Then you have the option year. You have the buyout. So he's guaranteed $11 million. I mean, I kind of just took a quick peek at Spot Track just to see what his market value was. And his market value was around like $7 million. But even then, like, I know that he improved slightly after he left Chicago, but it's not like he had a stellar year to the point where it's like, okay, that guy's a $10 million pitcher. Maybe the market value went up for him because, St. Louis, I don't know if they really have too many starters at this point in time because they traded most of them off or some of them retired. But and then you said the Reynaldo Lopez one, like, yeah, I mean, great if you can try to stretch him out to a starter, but if it doesn't work, then
it's not going to work. It's not going to work. When that guy was a starter earlier in his career, he had his whip his last 2 years. His walks and hits per innings pitched as a starter the last 2 years before he went into the bullpen, 1.457 and 1.663. He's an ineffective starting pitcher. That's why he ended up in the bullpen. It goes back to the thing that I always say about pitchers that are in the bullpen. They're guys that aren't good enough to be starters. That's why you don't overpay on bullpens. That's why you don't worry about your bullpen until the end. That's why you collect as much starting pitching as possible. I find it weird that the Braves are doing what they're doing. They must see something that they believe they can turn this guy into. But I think that in short spurts as a relief pitcher, good relief pitcher, can't be a closer. He was terrible as a closer when he tried to jump into that role when Liam Hendricks was down with cancer. But he's a good relief pitcher if used in the right positions. It's so weirdo to see that much money given to a guy, though, who's already shown that he can't be a starter consistently and is just a relief pitcher. And so I'm worried that the market price for starting pitching is going to be stupid. And it's weird, too, because it's so deep right now out there in free agency. So a guy like Cherington, who's got to deal with Bob Nutting's wallet, could very easily be sitting there saying, okay, I've got these 10, 15 guys that I've got on my board that I think are going to be in my price range. But I'm going to have to wait and see if 4 or 5 of them are picked by somebody else who can overpay. And then I'm going to have to go out and make my signings once I can go to those guys and say, yeah, sure, this guy made a bunch of money, but there's space running out. There's not as many chairs left in the game of musical chairs and teams you could end up on. What I'm offering you now is a good deal because you got passed over by these other teams. He may have to go that route because he has to deal with penny pinching Bob Nutting.
If you ever see me out and about in Pittsburgh, you will always recognize me. And not just because of the white beard, but also because the Y that is always on top of my head, the hat I always wear. The Yins brand, proud partners with Bucs in the Basement. 3 dynasties, 1 brand, Yins. Finally, 1 brand to rep all black and gold. Follow at Shop Yins for new merch drops and giveaways. Order online at www.shopyins, the emphasis on the 2 Z's, high quality comfort, lightweight materials, a new modern look for the black and gold. Made for Yins by a Yinzer. Do you think, Chris, maybe that like some of the teams are, overreacting the opposite direction? Like they're panicking that there's not going to be a whole lot out there. And so these first 2 that we're kind of seeing as an overpay, the market may correct itself with the next like few signings.
I don't know. It is weird the guys that are going off the board early. You know, you're the Cardinals. I know you like Lance Lynn, but do you really think he's worth $10 million to be on you're signing him for the 1-year deal? I think, it's weird to me. It's strange because it's so deep, the amount of pitching that's out there. And maybe the Cardinals choice, because it was a 1-year deal, was we want to have payroll flexibility in 2025. Here's a guy willing to sign a 1-year prove-it deal. You know, he's willing to sign it. Not a lot of people would take that, so that's why we're giving him that deal. The Lopez thing was the weirdest thing to me. The Braves,
and it's all going to depend.
The Braves have seen something. If they would have been like, well, we want him in the bullpen, I've been like, all right. I think it's an overpay. I thought it was an overpay that they gave 5 players of the White Sox for Aaron Bummer. Guy had a 1.6 whip. If you watch Aaron Bummer, I know we're talking about other teams here, but we're talking about the market, so this is something that the Pirates have got to look at. You watch Aaron Bummer. He's the kind of guy that the scouting report is stand at home plate and don't swing. And 9 times out of 10, he's going to throw 4 balls before he throws 3 strikes because he's just effectively wild. That's what he is. Now, I know he's a lefty. I understand that. But he's also the kind of guy that was far more effective when the rule wasn't that you had to face 3 guys in an inning. When that rule wasn't there, he was better. And he's one of those guys that hasn't recovered since that rule was put into place. So, the Sox didn't get like anything that was like world beating, but if you look at that deal, man, they got Soroka, who was a runner-up in the Cy Young, and then hurt his Achilles and was out for 2 years. He didn't forget how to pitch. Like, that guy could end up at the top of their rotation. That guy, just for Bummer, would have been enough in that deal. So the Braves overpaid to get a relief pitcher, and then they paid a lot of money for another relief pitcher that they're going to try to stretch out. So I don't know what's going on in Atlanta. They have some kind of plan. Somebody has hatched a secret evil plan that will either fail miserably or they're going to write a book about it like they wrote Moneyball, right? Where it doesn't make any sense right now to us, but they've figured something out. And they're going to go do something that nobody else in baseball is doing. And it'll either work or it won't work. So they're a fascinating story. But I do think that with this weird stuff that's happening early on, if Cherington signs somebody now, it's because he really wanted him. Because if with the budget that he probably has presented to him, he's going to have to sit back and see where the market sets itself.
The Braves thing, for me, it's like we're going to overpay for Ronaldo Lopez, but we're not going to let like Mike Soroka. I realized he was injured. I realized that, that different type of stuff happened, but they wouldn't see what he can do for a year if he ends up, falling into the bullpen or something. It's just I don't really get the whole thing.
It was a weird thing. He cost less than Lopez and than what they're going to end up paying Lopez. I think they're paying Lopez only like $4 million in the first year, and then he gets all of his money backloaded. So maybe, but it is a strange thing to do. And they also gave up Schuster. Like Jared Schuster, his last couple years in the minor leagues, just gangbusters. Single A to Double A 2 years ago, incredible. Kept guys off base at an amazing clip. Double A to Triple A the year after that, incredible. Kept guys off base at an amazing clip. Moved up so quickly over 2 years in their system. Got a limited number of starts. Had a couple of really good ones, because I know I had him on my fantasy baseball team. And then a couple of bad ones. They had a really deep set of starters, and there wasn't any room for them because they're trying to win a World Series. But there's a guy who has a lot of potential. He got included in that deal. I mean, Nicky Lopez isn't a world beater, but he's a guy who hit 300 just a couple years ago and plays incredible defense. He got included in the deal. One of their top 15 prospects got included in the deal. They gave away 5 players that all have potential. And it isn't a world-beating trade, but 5 guys for a left-handed reliever with a 1.6 something whip? They're seeing something that the rest of us are not seeing in Atlanta.
I mean, definitely, Chris. Or maybe I'm just mad that the Pirates couldn't swing a deal like that to be able to get a potential, like actually 2 potential starters out of that deal that would impact the team, within this year and the next year. So maybe that's where my frustration is. But
well,
yeah,
it shows
the Braves,
creativity. That's the thing. What the Atlanta thing shows creativity. I don't know if it's good idea or bad idea, right? I mean, even Chicago's got a new GM. That GM made a trade that I don't think you would have ever seen the last regime that was there for almost 20 years do, where they didn't go for like the high-end prospect on a list. They went for guys they scouted and they thought they could tweak or fix or whatever they're going to do. They brought in Brian Bannister from San Francisco, who's a renowned pitcher fixer, and he's in charge of their entire pitching development. And they got the guy from player development with the Diamondbacks, and we saw how well they did this year. The guy that built that team got moved over and became part of that front office in Chicago. So it's a completely different philosophy. So you saw 2 teams get very creative in a trade. And I think as fans in the offseason, that's what you really want to see, right? Like you want your GM to say, I went and got this guy not because he's on a list. Like that's what makes me nervous. What makes me nervous is if a general manager says, we traded so-and-so and we got so-and-so here. And you're able to immediately say, oh, that's a great trade. Look at this. MLB Pipeline says it's a great trade. FanGraphs says it's a great trade. If your GM is doing something based off of the same knowledge that you and I have, sometimes that's a bad thing. Because not every guy on that list pans out, and not everybody works. You want a guy who sits there and says, I've done something very creative because I have a staff that has identified something within that player that most people don't see, and we're confident in getting that guy. That gives me more confidence. That's what the Rays do, right? So I think this offseason, I'm waiting to see the creativity. Because I think if you're a fan, that's the thing that makes the offseason fun, and that's also the thing that makes you think to yourself, okay, at least I have a general manager who's not paint by numbers. And I don't think Cherington can be paint by numbers with the budget that Bob Nutting's going to give him year to year.
Well, the one thing he has done differently, Chris, is that usually in past years, he keeps the 40 man like right at 40. And he doesn't take somebody off of the 40 man until he has the exact person who's going to replace him. Like I said before, we signed a minor league deal. Nobody even really needs to learn this guy's name. I can't really pronounce it. I'm going to try. And Chris loves when I try to pronounce these terrible names. It's Gilberto Celestino. We signed him to. We signed him to a minor league deal.
Celestino. That sounds good to me. Just say it with more confidence, and people will be convinced you said it right.
Yeah, and it could be Gilberto. I don't really know. But here's the thing is, in previous years, that's a guy that we probably would have picked up and had on our 40 man like we've done. I think it was like 2 years ago was like Greg Allen or somebody like that. Now, I don't know why that name's sticking out in my head, but you picked him up. You kept him on the 40 man until you had somebody else to replace him. Well, now at this point in time, we were at 37. He still signs this guy to a minor league deal because you do need depth at AAA, and you need a guy who, has at least shown the ability to make it onto a major league team at some point in time. But I feel like he didn't do it the way he normally would have done it. Right now, we're at 37 players.
I got you at 38. FanGraphs has you at 38 right now. Might be because of the Barucki deal. Somewhere along the line, it ended up with the 38 officially. I don't know why. FanGraphs has you at 38. I could. FanGraphs could be wrong, but he's normally pretty good. Jason Martinez is pretty good.
We've had Jason on before.
We've had him on. He's normally really good. His breakdown has it at 38 right now.
I might have to change the title of the thing, because I'm pretty sure the title of our thing is Pirates Roster Remains at 37.
That's right. I'm looking right now on your screen, and you named the title of the show Pirates Roster Remains at 37, and I'm looking at FanGraphs, and it says there's 38 of them. Well, you better after we're done recording, you better figure it out. Okay.
I'm gonna have to figure it out. I'm gonna contact.
This is a high-end show with a high-end band playing a high-end song at the beginning of it that's catchy. I expect you to know how many people are on the 40-man roster at this point.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna. I tell you the truth. I'll probably just message Jason after this and go, dude, what did I miss? Like, what move did we make? There was. We better start checking Twitter at this point in time, Chris.
Yeah, you messed up somewhere, but that's okay. It's okay. The
Yeah.
point is that he's got a little bit of flexibility. And it'll be interesting to see if he makes a selection in the Rule 5 draft. Because, in previous years, that made sense. In previous years, the Pirates could put a guy on their team that another team was like, yeah, we don't even think he's good enough to be on our 40-man roster. And the Pirates could be like, we're not only going to take him, but we're going to play him. I don't think that you do that in a year where you're trying to contend now. Like, you really got to believe in somebody. And most likely, I think the only type of player you take in a Rule 5 pick would be a relief pitcher, because those are the kind of guys that can make quick jumps. Guy starts out in your bullpen as a Rule 5, and if he does well enough, he sticks, and he's part of your roster. And if he doesn't, you return him because he's just a relief pitcher. So that would be probably the only thing I think that they would go do. But he's got a little bit of flexibility right now. And, you want to have that flexibility as well for if you make a trade. You got to be able to make moves, even though I don't think that even matters either. I'm sure he's got 4 or 5 guys right now that are on his 40-man that he's like, if I got to drop somebody, this is the first guy off my 40-man. That's what I would have as a GM. I would have that. I'd have a big giant list, like on my wall.
We've always talked about the sticky notes. He just removes them. He goes, look, guy's not on our team anymore.
I would have a list on the wall and I would have a curtain. And then that way, if a player or anybody showed up, I would just draw the curtain across so that they couldn't see it, or one of those like folding, blackboards or something like that. So nobody could see my list except for me, but I'd have my big giant list up on the board and I would know exactly who I was dropping the moment that something happened where I had to drop somebody. I would always have that. I mean, I do it with my fantasy baseball team, for crying out loud. So I would imagine a good general manager does it.
Well, you wouldn't ask me what I'm doing with my fantasy team, Chris, because my team's always terrible.
You're terrible. Every year, you're the worst team in the league. You've had the number 1 overall draft pick now for 4 years, it feels like. It's brutal. How are you so bad at this?
I don't know. So that's probably why I wouldn't know if you're at 37 or 38. And I was trying to double check it real quick, and I can't wrap my brain around it.
You know what you are? You're the perfect scout. The Pirates would do well with you because you love prospects. That's why your fantasy baseball team's so bad, because you love prospects. You're always building for 3 years from now, and that's why you're never any good. Okay, but you love prospects. That's why you go down and you see all the minor league games. That's why you always know more about the minor league players in the Pirate system than anybody else that talks about them, because you're dead on top of it all the time. You're a prospect hound, right now, if we haven't even talked about this ahead of time. If I sat there and said, who is somebody down in the minor leagues right now that you love that could come up at some point in 2024 and contribute that you love? Who?
Jared Jones.
Okay.
Pitcher at Indianapolis. That would probably be my number 1, or Anthony Solomito if he makes a big jump from
Do either one of them have a chance out of spring training to make the
No.
team?
I don't believe so. And like I said, it's unless Ben Cherington decides to operate differently than he's operated in previous years. Jared Jones didn't need to be added to the 40-man because he's not Rule 5 eligible until next December. And he usually lets the season get started until he would add one of those guys. Now, if there would be injuries or something else would come up, I mean, we've already seen, I thought Chris didn't jump on the show last week. He said he was sick. I know he was sick at this point in time now, but I thought
you can hear the stuffiness still in me. I'm still stuffy as I'm talking.
You didn't want to talk about, Johan Oviedo getting injured and us only having 1 pitcher at this point in time on the roster that we feel comfortable with. But yeah, I mean, Jared Jones is a guy that, that's who people are going to push to make it out of spring training if one of these other guys doesn't rebound, like a Luis Ortiz, Quinn Priester, Rowanzi Contreras. Well, but I kind of see him as a guy that can still contribute.
Here's the thing. The Pirates right now looking for pitching, them seeing the Aaron Bummer deal, just to go back to that deal, there's got to be something in them that's like, didn't we have anything that we could have given to get a couple of rotation pieces? Because Soroka and Schuster right now in the Pirates rotation, they'd both be on the rotation, wouldn't they? Both of those guys that the Braves couldn't keep, right? You would put Soroka in your rotation right now. In fact, I'd probably list him right behind Keller if I was just going off of potential, based upon if he comes back and he's fully healthy. And Schuster would definitely be in my top 5 starting pitchers. So those guys being available, I think there's a lot of teams, not just the Pirates, who are probably sitting there after that trade going, man, did we have something better than Aaron Bummer we could have given the Braves to get those guys? Did they really just want to get rid of them and they were going to non-tender them? I mean, it's a sneaky good move. And those are because I'm telling you, those two guys, throw them into the rotation right now, they would take two of the jobs. And they were just sitting there for a relief pitcher. And they had three other players thrown in along with them. So I think that's what we're looking for in the offseason now is like, can Ben Cherington identify those needs and on the phone? And does he have something that he can move? Because you got to think that he's got something he can move along. Because what the White Sox are doing, they have players that are at that same level as the pitchers you just mentioned that are down in the minor leagues, but they're not going to rely on them next year. They're going to be fighting to try to be like that backup, right? So what you're describing are guys that if there's injury could come up in the middle of the year. The Pirates have that, but they've got to bolster that rotation. If you really want to contend, you got to bolster that rotation. You got to add a couple of pitchers, and it sounds like that's what Cherington's going to do. If I'm listening to what he's saying correctly, that he's going to go and do it. It's just I'm just curious as to what type of pitcher he's actually targeting, and that's what you do. If you can fill in this rotation, and then those players you just mentioned are sitting there behind. Now you've got depth, and you've got a future, because you don't want the window to open and close within a couple of years. So I think that's the thing. He needs those guys in the middle that he brings in now, bolsters this rotation, and then you're not sitting around worried about some guy that's in the minor leagues and whether or not he's going to make it up this year.
Yeah, and I think from what we've heard from Cherington, and even I think it was Robert Murray came out, would have been towards the end of last week and said that the Pirates were looking at, I mean, he specifically mentioned like two pitchers that were of like a higher caliber or higher level than they had been looking for in the previous seasons. But we don't know exactly what that means. If that means higher caliber as in player or higher caliber as in money, because the market is being set a little bit higher. I'm not really sure. And until Ben Cherington actually makes those moves, I mean, that's going to be like the first, like, I guess, shoe that drops. And a lot of people are going to be talking about it is who is going to be, the Pirates' first signing for the rotation, because you need at least two at this point in time. With Oviedo out, you may need three, but the third one may just need to be, the caliber that we had signed previously, and like a Vince Velasquez or something like that.
Yeah. I think that. Well, yeah. I think that if you're Ben Cherington now, it really just kind of becomes. It's got to be a long-term acquisition. Like, I don't want to see any one-year guys, right? I want to see guys that you're going to bring in that are going to be something that's going to be established on your team. Like somebody that you're like, okay, even if it's somebody that you're trying to get a rebound out of, or somebody who's coming off of an injury, or somebody who's like, even if they're a little bit older, like 31, 32-year-old starting pitcher, right? Whoever you're bringing in, I think needs to be somebody that you have a long-term hope for, right? And then in doing that, you also have to make sure that you're spending the money wisely. So there's a lot of pro scouting that's got to be involved here, and there's got to be a little bit of a leap of faith when you give a guy a multi-year deal to be a pitcher. Like, you really got to believe what you're bringing in is going to be a real contributor to your team and going to help your team. There's no guarantees at this point, but I think the idea before of like bring in a talented player and be okay with flipping them if it doesn't work out at the end of the year, I think that's gone now at this point. I think your team has shown that they're on the cusp of being a competitive team, and getting the amount of wins you need to make it into the postseason next year is an attainable thing if you bring in pitching and you shore up your team in free agency this offseason. And I think the trades are coming too. I mean, I know that's the other fear that I have, is that I think all general managers across all of baseball fall in love with their draft picks and their acquisitions, right? I mean, we do it. We do it when we play fantasy sports, right? We make an acquisition, and then we're like, oh, this guy didn't work out, but I don't want to drop him because I still remember what I gave up for him. And they become attached. And he's got to now be a little bit ruthless, even to himself and his own feelings, if there's the right trade out there, and he's got to deal somebody away that he acquired 2 years ago that he thought was going to turn into something. Even if he thinks they could turn into something later, he's got to look at the overall value and continue to make moves. So this is a big offseason for Ben Cherington, okay? because the trades are clearly out there. You know, coming out of the pandemic and coming out of that shortened season and coming out of the whole thing with the labor strife, you saw trades down across Major League Baseball. To see some early moves here, I think you're going to have a very active off season, because not everybody's going to want to go out and just spend money in the market. And some positions are really thin. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for teams to make moves. It just comes down to whether or not he's able to find the right move and pull the trigger. And he's got to now be thinking more along the lines of long term, 3-year windows for pitchers at least when he's bringing them on, because he's got to start building that team to be competitive each and every year. The base is there now, in my opinion. Go win. Start figuring out how to put a team out there that people sit there in preseason and go, yeah, that's a playoff contender right there. That's what they should be. You get to the end of this offseason and nobody's saying that about the Pirates. It's time to get the pitchforks and the torches out.
And that's like a hard thing to predict here, Chris, is like the trades and stuff. But I mean, if you would say a organization is set up to make trades, Ben Cherington, I mean, we're talking about players that were protected. Sung-Chae Chang, a middle infielder who was in Double-A last year, is another protection, which adds to the long list of middle infielders that we have, on this roster. Liover Peguero, Nick Gonzalez. I mean, obviously Ono Cruz is in there, but you still have, Alika Williams. There is a number of places. And we even talked about one of the previous shows that, where is a place where there isn't much on the open market? It's in the middle infield. It's in second baseman. It's in shortstops. And the Pirates have a plethora of that.
Yeah, for sure. They have the pieces. They have the ability to go and do things that they need to do. You watch that deal that the Braves made for a relief pitcher and what they gave up. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are moves to be made for the Pirates. They have positions of strength. Now let's just see what they end up doing.
Now I